welcome back. This is Mike here down the RC corner. It's going to be a bit of a different video than what you normally see on my channel. I'm going to do the build here of the XC118 RC buggy car that I got. Just going to show you here quick the manual. It's not a step-by-step manual how to build the kit. It's just a blow-up video or a blow-up page, graphic detail, and shows you where all the parts are and the part numbers. So this is all the stuff that you get with it. So just for simplicity, we're just going to eliminate some things out of the way. So we got the body and the wing, that's like final details. Also the wheels, we're not going to be needing right away. The shocks were already pre-made, so we'll get that out of the way. Suspension arms will be something later we'll take care of. The chassis is all together in one bag here too, so we don't really want to spend much time on that right now. I think the best part is to start with the XB2 bag, and we're going to start building the bulkheads and the diffs inside. And just let me zoom in on that, and that's the diagram I'm going to be starting with, and locating those parts and assembling that together. I'm going to do this video step by step, kind of phases or more, so like I said, more in phases. So once I complete a diff, and I'll talk about how it went together and what my experience was about it. So this hopefully this build goes smooth. I'll let you know how it goes, and stay tuned and sit tight, and I'll do some different phases of the build. Here it goes. All right, guys. Okay, the first step here, I just wanted to show you guys, I put the diffs together, and actually they came assembled mostly, and you just had to put them inside the bulkhead. Now this would be the front diff bulkhead, and you can see the drive cups and everything were all assembled, put in the right way. You have to look at the manual to see how that's done, but that's how she went in. And I want to show you the rear one. Now this one's a lot more tricky than the front one, and it's hard to see because there is no steps. It's just a blow up. So just want to make sure you get the sequence right, because it's hard to see, and it took me a little bit to figure it out. So you have the dog bone drive shaft that goes into the diff housing here. So, and there's a couple E-clips that hold it all in place. So the first thing that goes on the drive shaft is this plastic piece here, and inside of it you're going to want to put a bearing. As you can see, there's this black plastic spacer that comes on down that's been sliding around on this drive shaft, so you want to get that in there next. Next thing you want to put on is your spur gear. Now there is a little pinhole here that the spur gear, when you insert the pin, that the spur gear is going to lock onto. Now there's an E-clip right here that clamps on. It keeps it tight from this thing going back and forth that way. And inside too, you have your couple bearings inside, and you have the gear, and there's also an E-clip that goes on inside the gear. Now that's the sequence you want to put everything on. And you also want to screw in the hinge pin, suspension hinge pin holder there too, because you won't have any room afterwards to do that. And just want to mention also too that if you ever strip out your spur gear, you're going to have to unassemble the rear bulkhead, and all this is going to have to come off. So that is going to be quite a bit of a chore, at least a 20-30 minute chore to ever change out a strip spur gear. So you really want to make sure you have your motor mounted properly, with the proper spacing between the pinion and the spur. So I'll continue on with the build, and I'll periodically stop and do more updates as I go along here, so sit tight. Okay, so just to put a little final on this one phase, what all came in that bag. So I put on the front shock tower, rear shock tower, and the rear wing mount. So everything here is totally assembled, plus the little nubby that the body post that the body will sit on the back. So that's that phase of the build. Now I think the next phase would be to finish building out this way off the front and rear bulkhead. So I moved to XB1 bag, and we'll build out the front and rear suspension on these, and then once that's done, I think we'll attach it to the chassis and go from there and put the shocks on and stuff like that. So stay tuned for the next phase. Okay, welcome back. I'm just going to show you here the progress that I made. Now I have put the shock tower on the front, and I put the pins in and closed it with the other front piece to keep the hinge pins in, and put the suspension arms. So that's the front. That's as far as I got there. In the back, I have it half assembled already. The back side uses dog bones, and the front uses CVDs that are already put together for you. So in the back, I just want to show you really quick how this all went together. So you're going to end up with the hub holder here, and then you want to put a bearing. Let me focus that in on the outside of it, because it's going to sit like that. And then you want to put the big bearing on the inside like so, and you want to drop in the drive cup like so, and it's going to sit in here like that into the arm, and you're going to put a pin through like that, and then I'll show you on the other end. There's a screw that screws in right there that covers the pin that keeps it from coming out, so you can do that yourself. And then I just want to show you that the dog bone pops in here, pops into that drive cup there, and then you can fold it together. You get that upper linkage to go right there, comes down, you grab your screw like so, it will go into this thing, and you screw it in over here, screw it into the hub holder, and there you go. Pretty much completed the back, and now the back suspension is good. And that's what it's going to look like, and you're off into the races. And I'll show you what it looks like when I do the front and work with those. Alright, stay tuned. Okay, I just want to show you what I did with the front side here. I got this side complete, and I'll show you what's going on with this side so you could step through it yourself. Let's try and make sure you got enough light on here. So this linkage arm screws into the shock tower. Now I've taken the inside of the hub, two-part hub, and I've slid the pin in so it's in, and I've put the screw in that keeps the pin from holding up. Now this is the linkage arm that the steering is going to connect to. So inside you want to put the big bearing, and on the outside you want the small bearing. Now you want to make sure you do this right, because you want this hook part to be going towards the rear of the vehicle. You don't want to be ending up upside down and have it facing outwards to the front. So it's up high and facing that way. So I'll just put it together in like this here, and inside these have little black plastic sleeves, and you'll see it's on that screw. There's a little plastic sleeve on that screw. You can insert it into that hole there and then screw down. Hopefully this will go in. I feel it biting. One thing I also want to mention too, that everything here is just snug tight. Once you feel it starting to tighten, give it maybe a quarter or half turn more, and that's as far as enough. Nothing ever is going to be tight like Loctite. So anyways, that's why I went with the hand driver on this. I was thinking about using my Ryobi Tech 4, but I opted not to. So I'm just doing the bottom side of this right now, and we'll see how she goes. And it is tightening there. And you have to be careful a bit on the outside here, because this bearing will fall out because there's nothing really holding it in place. So always be mindful of that kind of stuff. This is the CVD. It comes with it for the front. And you want to drop it in and have it push right up against the inside bearing. Notice the small bearings on the outside's already popped out along that shaft. So there you go. So that's in all the way. You can fit the dog bone instead of the drive cup on the transmission there, differential, and then of course you got this here on the top, and that's your final screw that's going to complete this kind of part of the assembly. And I'll just quickly do that for you, and then we'll talk about where we're going to go from there. So after you tighten these in, the bearing goes in here like so. The CVD sticks out enough and you'll see a hole, and that's where these little pins here go, and then you put the wheel nut. Now you can put those on if you want, but I would suggest like put masking tape to keep those on, because those will fall off if you're wiggling around. I'm going to leave them off in the meantime, and I'll deal with that later. But right now we're almost to the stage where we're going to mount this to the chassis, and we have to do the steering rack. And once we get that together, then things are going to fall together quite quickly after that. As you can see, the shocks are already in place. We got to put a little bit of the grease onto the diffs when we screw it onto the chassis, and of course we got the mortar mount and stuff like that. But the end of the light, or the tunnel, the light's at the end of the tunnel, so hopefully have this wrapped up soon. So stay tight, or sit tight. I'll be right back. Okay, I just want to show you where I am now in this phase of the build. I've completed the front. I put the shocks on. This is the front end of the buggy. And just a note on the shocks, on the front there's black spacers, so it goes shock tower, black spacer, shock, then you put the screws in. You're in the back side pardon me, of the part of the buggy. If I can show you here, it goes shock, then spacer, then screw into the shock tower. So the spacer is on the opposite spot on the back than it is on the front, and that just gives you the clearance you need for the shocks to work properly. I chose the inside hole and the far outside hole on the suspension arm. That gives you a lay down feature. More upright will give you more resistance and more shock. With your shocks laid down, in a laid down position they call that, there's not as much suspension, and your buggy will tend to be a little more smooth, especially on a less bumpy terrain. And then I have put together the steering rack, and I just want to show you guys how that went together quick. So the steering rack here is on above these two posts, and then underneath there is the two linkage arms. Now in the bag you'll get 3, but there's 2 that are the same size and one that's shorter. The shorter one will be the linkage arm that goes to the servo horn, so leave that one aside. Underneath you screw those 2 in, okay, and on the top one that has the plastic sleeves that the screws go into that fit into these And then of course we have the Servo Saver here. There's a spring in there and an E-clip that holds it in, and there's no pretty way of doing it. You're just gonna have to work your way through it and press that spring down as best as you can and slide that clip on. So it took me about 3 or 4 minutes to get it, so you're just gonna have to be patient and work through it, and maybe use a needle nose pliers or something to help you do it, but I end up doing it with my fingers just fine. So I'm going to put some grease on into the diffs here. They included grease in the bag, so we're going to grease the diffs. I'm going to screw the front and back on and connect together the drivetrain, and then we'll pretty much have this buggy nailed down. And then just some of the other stuff, we have the top plate, the battery strap, and some battery posts, battery tray posts will have to go in, and we're almost there, folks, so just hang tight and I'll show you what's next. Okay, this is the final phase, and as you can see, I pretty much have the buggy completed here. After I put the grease in the diffs, and I attached the front end to the buggy chassis first, and then I put on the steering rack next, and it screws in fairly simple from the bottom. And I know this may look more like a big jump from the last phase, but it actually goes together quite easily next. And then you put the back end on and you screw it down. There's 4 screws there that complete that. And then you want to get the motor mount plate out, and you kind of want to put it in and put the top plate on and fasten it down, and it screws in nice. And then all you're pretty much left with is the underneath. You screw in the 2 posts for the battery tray, and that goes pretty simple. Put the strap across, put the pins in, and then I left these loose, as you can see, but these are the servo mounts, and I didn't want to tighten them down because I'm taking those right off when I have to put the servo into this car, so I just left them loose. And then of course there's a little gear guard back here that's optional if you want to include that there, so I just stuck it in, and that'll protect the spur gear from getting small stones and stuff inside, jamming it. And then of course I put the wheels on, and in case you've never done that before, there's a little pin that goes through the out shaft, and then there's a little hex nut that slides on and slots into that pin. Put the wheel on top, press it all down, and put the wheel nut on and tighten her up. So you can see here how that all works. So the servo is going to face in. There's the linkage arm I attached on. Everything else is pretty much straightforward, doesn't need much explaining. So I think I covered it all in this buggy. You might be wondering why I haven't put the body on and the wing. Well, these are just cut. There's no holes for where they stick onto the posts. But let me see if I can focus this for you. It's really hard to see, but you'll see they leave indicator dots where the body, you get a reamer and you make the holes for it, and it will sit on. And those holes aren't done. There's another hole right here. There's an antenna hole here if you wish to use an antenna, and there's another hole here by my finger and thumb, and they will sit right on. They're just guides for you to put the body post holes. So that's what it'll be. And my next update for this will be put the electronics in. I got a low-C brushless system going in here. I will paint up the body, give it a little scheme, maybe throw a few decals on it, stickers, whatever you prefer, and then we'll get this sucker out and running. But if you ask me, it looks pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to riding it. It's a 1/18 scale, the XC racing buggy. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is my build video. Hope this encouraged you to buy this and not be afraid to put it together, and you can reference this video for difficult spots of assembly. So again, thanks for tuning in. Leave your comments below. I appreciate all your feedback. If you have anything you want to ask about this buggy, feel free to do that. All right, take care and peace out.